In the year 2147, humans had spread far beyond Earth. They lived on many planets and worked alongside alien species. But there was one strange rule that everyone had to follow. All non-human creatures were required to wear protective armor whenever they were near humans. This law came from a time long ago when some aliens had hidden weapons or dangerous abilities. The leaders said the armor kept everyone safe. Jacob Hayes didn't like this rule. He thought it made no sense. Jacob worked as a diplomat on Vega 9, a busy planet full of markets, factories, and people from all over the galaxy. Every day, he saw aliens walking around in heavy suits of armor. Some looked uncomfortable, while others seemed annoyed. To Jacob, the rule felt unfair. It created walls between humans and other species instead of bringing them closer together. Rachel Moore, his friend and coworker, often talked to him about it. Rachel was an anthropologist who studied alien cultures. She spent most of her time learning about their traditions and ways of life. While she agreed with Jacob that the armor rule was strange, she warned him not to speak too loudly against it. The council doesn't like questions, she told him one evening as they walked through the crowded streets of Vega 9. If you push too hard, they'll silence you. But Jacob couldn't stop thinking about it. A few days later, something unusual caught his eye. He was inspecting the market district, making sure everything followed the rules, when he noticed a group of aliens without any armor. They stood near a fruit stand, chatting quietly. At first glance, they appeared completely normal. But then, something strange happened. They disappeared. One moment they were there, and the next, they were gone, leaving behind only a faint shimmer in the air. Jacob froze. His heart raced as he tried to process what he had just seen. Aliens without armor, vanishing into thin air. That wasn't possible, or at least, it shouldn't have been. Curious and a little scared, he approached the spot where they had been standing. There was nothing left except for a small patch of glowing energy residue on the ground. It pulsed faintly before fading away. Later that night, Jacob met up with Rachel to tell her what he had witnessed. At first, she didn't believe him. "Are you sure you weren't imagining things?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. But when Jacob showed her the recording he had taken with his wrist camera, her expression changed. Her eyes widened as she studied the footage. This is incredible," she whispered. "I've read about energy signatures like this before." They matched descriptions of ancient Caliph technology. The Caliph, Jacob repeated. He had heard stories about them. They were an old civilization that had vanished thousands of years ago. Their technology was said to be incredibly advanced, capable of doing things modern science still couldn't explain. Rachel nodded. "If someone has access to Caliph tech, we need to find out why. And more importantly, who's behind it." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "We should talk to Dr. Alan Pierce. He knows more about alien artifacts than anyone else." Jacob wasn't sure if getting involved was a good idea. Digging into secrets could get them into trouble, but the thought of uncovering the truth excited him. If the armor rule was based on lies, maybe he could help change it. With Rachel by his side, he decided to take the risk. Little did he know, this decision would lead him down a path filled with danger, betrayal, and discoveries that would shake the galaxy to its core. Jacob and Rachel decided to visit Dr. Alan Pierce the very next morning. They traveled to the edge of Vega 9, where the city's gleaming skyscrapers gave way to dusty roads and old buildings. Dr. Pierce lived in a cluttered workshop surrounded by strange gadgets, alien artifacts, and stacks of books that reached the ceiling. The air smelled of oil and burnt metal, and the faint hum of machinery filled the room. Dr. Pierce was an older man with wild gray hair and glasses perched crookedly on his nose. He looked up from a table covered in tools and wires when they entered. "What do you two want?" he asked gruffly, though his eyes softened when Rachel introduced herself. She had read some of his research papers and admired his work. Rachel explained what Jacob had seen in the market, the aliens without armor and the glowing energy residue. She showed him the recording, pointing out the shimmering spot left behind. Dr. Pierce leaned closer, studying the footage intently. After a long pause, he let out a low whistle. "This is Caliph Tech," he said finally. "No doubt about it." "The Caliph? But they've been extinct for thousands of years," Jacob interrupted, frowning. "How could anyone have their technology now?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Dr. Pierce replied, rubbing his chin. "Their artifacts are rare, but not unheard of. What worries me is how this tech is being used. If someone has figured out how to replicate or adapt it, they could cause serious trouble." He glanced at them sharply. "You need to be careful. Whoever is using this tech won't appreciate nosy humans poking around." Despite the warning, Jacob felt more determined than ever. He wanted answers. Rachel shared his determination, but reminded him to stay cautious. "We can't just charge into this blindly," she said later as they left Dr. Pierce's workshop. "We're dealing with something bigger than us." Their investigation took a surprising turn a few days later when they ran into Maya Torres. Maya was a journalist known for exposing corruption within the Interstellar Council. She had a reputation for being fearless and reckless. Jacob recognized her immediately. Her face was often on news broadcasts. When she approached them in a quiet cafe, they were both startled. "I know what you're looking into," Maya said without preamble. Her sharp green eyes locked onto theirs. "Caliph Tech. I've been tracking rumors about it for months. Someone's trading these artifacts illegally, and I think high-ranking council members are involved." Jacob and Rachel exchanged uneasy glances. They hadn't told anyone else about their discovery, so how did Maya know? Before they could ask, she continued, "I've got sources who say there's a secret facility under Vega 9's industrial zone. That's where they're experimenting with the tech. If you're serious about finding the truth, we should work together." Rachel hesitated. Maya seemed trustworthy enough, but working with a rogue journalist carried risks. Still, she couldn't deny that Maya's information could be valuable. Jacob, eager to move forward, agreed almost instantly. "Fine," Rachel said reluctantly. "But we stick to the plan. No unnecessary risks." Over the next few days, the three of them prepared carefully. Maya provided forged credentials and blueprints of the industrial zone, while Jacob and Rachel gathered supplies. The thought of sneaking into a heavily guarded facility made Jacob nervous, but he pushed those feelings aside. He reminded himself why they were doing this: to uncover the truth and maybe even change the unfair rules forced upon aliens. On the night of the mission, they dressed in plain clothes, blending in as maintenance workers. As they made their way toward the facility, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger and far more dangerous than they realized. The night was dark and cold as Jacob, Rachel, and Maya approached the industrial zone. The area was filled with towering factories and warehouses, their windows glowing faintly in the distance. The streets were mostly empty, except for a few patrol drones that hovered silently overhead. The trio moved quickly, sticking to the shadows to avoid being seen. Maya led the way, her eyes scanning the surroundings carefully. She had memorized the blueprints of the facility and knew exactly where they needed to go. "We're close," she whispered, pointing toward a large building ahead. Its walls were made of dull gray metal, and thick pipes ran along the sides, hissing softly with steam. A sign above the door read, **** restricted area. Authorized personnel only ****. Jacob adjusted the fake ID badge clipped to his jacket. It felt strange, pretending to be someone else. Rachel noticed his nervousness and gave him a reassuring smile. "Just stay calm," she murmured. "We've got this." They reached the entrance without incident. Maya swiped a stolen access card through the security panel, and the heavy metal door slid open with a low groan. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of oil and machinery. The corridors were dimly lit, with glowing conduits running along the walls. Every few minutes, a security drone floated by, its red sensors scanning the area. "This way," Maya said softly, motioning for them to follow. They moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet lining the floor. As they turned a corner, they heard voices coming from a nearby room. Jacob froze, but Maya waved for them to keep moving. "Don't stop," she mouthed silently. "Act like you belong here." They passed several doors before finally stopping at one marked ***, Lab 12B***. Maya checked the hallway again to make sure it was clear, then used another access card to unlock the door. Inside, they found rows of tables covered with strange equipment. Glass containers held glowing liquids, and monitors displayed complex data streams. But what caught their attention were the aliens. In the center of the room, several aliens lay strapped to metal tables. Their bodies were connected to wires and tubes, and parts of their skin were fused with shimmering fragments of armor-like material. Some groaned weakly, while others stared blankly at the ceiling. Jacob's stomach churned at the sight. What are they doing to them?" he whispered, horrified. Rachel stepped closer, her hands trembling as she examined one of the creatures. "It's some kind of experiment," she said quietly. "They're combining Caliph tech with living beings. This is monstrous." Maya opened a small device and began downloading files from a nearby computer. "We need proof," she said firmly. "If we can show the public what's really going on here, we might have a chance to stop it." As the data transferred, Jacob wandered to another table. He noticed a folder lying open, its pages filled with notes and diagrams. One phrase stood out: ***, Project Ascension. Phase 2 initiated ***. Before he could read more, an alarm blared suddenly, piercing the silence. "What happened?" Rachel cried, rushing back to join them. "I don't know." Maya snapped, frantically pulling the device from the computer. "Someone must have detected us." Guards burst into the room moments later, weapons drawn. Jacob grabbed Rachel's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "We have to go. Now," he shouted. Maya stayed behind, firing a small EMP device at the guards' equipment. Sparks flew as the drones and weapons malfunctioned. "Go," she yelled. "I'll hold them off." Jacob hesitated, torn between leaving and staying to help. But Maya shoved him toward the door. "Don't argue. Just get out of here." Heart pounding, Jacob and Rachel ran down the corridor, the sound of shouting and gunfire echoing behind them. As they fled, Jacob glanced back once, catching a final glimpse of Maya standing defiantly against the guards. Her voice rang out clearly. "Expose the truth for all of us." And then she was gone. Jacob and Rachel ran as fast as they could, their hearts pounding in their chests. The alarms blared louder with each step, and the sound of boots hitting the metal floor echoed behind them. They didn't look back. Maya's sacrifice weighed heavily on Jacob's mind, but he knew they had to keep moving. If they were caught, her bravery would be for nothing. They turned a corner sharply, nearly colliding with a patrol drone. It hovered there for a moment, its red sensors scanning them. Jacob held his breath, gripping the fake ID badge tightly. To his relief, the drone beeped softly and floated away, apparently convinced they were authorized personnel. "That was too close," Rachel whispered, clutching her side as she tried to catch her breath. "We're not safe yet," Jacob replied, glancing over his shoulder. The shouts of guards were getting closer. He spotted a narrow maintenance corridor ahead and pulled Rachel into it. The passage was dark and cramped, lined with pipes that dripped water onto the floor. It smelled musty like old metal and dampness, but it was their best chance to lose their pursuers. They moved quickly, navigating the maze-like tunnels. After several tense minutes, they found a ladder leading upward. Jacob climbed first, pushing open a hatch at the top. Cool night air greeted them as they emerged onto the roof of the facility. The city sprawled below, its lights twinkling like stars against the black sky. For a brief moment, Jacob allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. They had made it out alive, at least for now. But there was no time to rest. They needed to get as far away from the facility as possible. Rachel retrieved the small device Maya had given them before her sacrifice. It contained the stolen files, evidence of the horrifying experiments they had witnessed. "We need to see what's on here," she said, her voice trembling. "Maya gave her life for this. We can't waste it." They found shelter in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the industrial zone. Inside, they set up a makeshift workstation using Rachel's portable holoscreen. As the data loaded, Jacob paced nervously, his mind racing with thoughts of Maya and the aliens trapped in that lab. What kind of people could do something so cruel? And why? The files revealed shocking details about Project Ascension ***. The Interstellar Council wasn't just experimenting with Caliph technology. They were trying to weaponize it. The goal was to create super soldiers by fusing alien biology with the ancient tech. Worse still, the Council planned to use these experiments to enforce stricter control over non-human species. The armor mandate was only the beginning. By keeping aliens dependent on outdated technology, humanity maintained its dominance. Rachel's hands shook as she scrolled through the documents. "This is worse than we thought," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're not just oppressing aliens. They're treating them like tools, like they don't matter." Jacob clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. "We have to tell everyone," he said firmly. "If people see this, they'll have to act. No one will stand for this kind of cruelty." But getting the information out wouldn't be easy. The Council had eyes and ears everywhere. They couldn't trust anyone, not even their own colleagues. Jacob suggested reaching out to Ethan Cole, a senator known for supporting interspecies equality. Though skeptical at first, Rachel agreed. If anyone could help, it was him. As they prepared to contact Ethan, Jacob noticed something odd. A small tracking signal embedded in the data files blinked faintly on the screen. Someone already knew they had the information. "We've been compromised," he said grimly. "They're coming for us." Rachel's face went pale. "Then we don't have much time. We need to release this to the public ourselves. Right now." Jacob nodded, determination hardening his expression. They couldn't wait any longer. Using Rachel's equipment, they hacked into the planetary communication network and broadcast the files live across Vega 9. Within minutes, the truth was out there for everyone to see. The reaction was immediate. News outlets picked up the story, and protests erupted in the streets. People demanded answers, and the Council scrambled to respond. But Jacob and Rachel knew their fight was far from over. As they watched the chaos unfold from their hiding place, they realized the danger they were in had only just begun. The broadcast sent shockwaves through Vega 9 and beyond. Within hours, the stolen files were everywhere, on news feeds, social media, and even protest signs held up by angry crowds in the streets. The evidence of the Council's experiments was undeniable. Images of aliens strapped to tables, their bodies fused with Caliph tech, sparked outrage. Protesters chanted slogans like "No more lies" and "Equal rights for all species" as they marched through the city. Jacob and Rachel watched it all unfold from their hiding place, a small apartment in a quiet part of Vega 9. They stayed off the grid, using encrypted devices to monitor the situation. For the first time in days, Jacob allowed himself a small smile. "It's working," he said softly. "People are waking up." But Rachel wasn't so sure. She paced the room, her brow furrowed. "This isn't over yet," she said. "The Council won't let this go. They'll try to silence us, and anyone else who speaks out." As if on cue, the news reported that several journalists and activists had been arrested under mysterious circumstances. Others had simply disappeared. The Council claimed they were investigating false information spread by unknown agitators. But everyone knew the truth. The Council was desperate to regain control. Jacob suggested reaching out to Ethan Cole again. The senator had publicly condemned the experiments after seeing the broadcast, calling for an emergency summit to address the crisis. If anyone could protect them while they exposed more of the Council's secrets, it was him. Rachel reluctantly agreed, though she warned Jacob to be careful. Trusting the wrong person could get them killed. They arranged a secret meeting at a secluded park on the edge of the city. Ethan arrived alone, dressed in plain clothes to avoid drawing attention. He was younger than Jacob expected, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. His expression was grim as he listened to their story. "I've seen the files," Ethan said after they finished explaining. "This goes deeper than I thought. The Council has been lying to us for years, not just about the armor mandate, but about everything." He paused, rubbing his temples. "If we don't act now, they'll find a way to bury the truth again." Ethan promised to help them present the evidence during the upcoming summit. Together, they crafted a plan to rally support from sympathetic delegates and expose the Council's corruption. But as they worked, cracks began to show in their alliance. Leaks started surfacing, hinting that someone close to them had betrayed their location. Their safe house was compromised, forcing them to move constantly. One night, as they packed their belongings in a hurry, Rachel confronted Jacob. "We can't keep running forever," she said. "Whoever leaked our location knows we're working with Ethan. What if he's playing both sides?" Jacob hesitated. He didn't want to believe Ethan would betray them, but Rachel's concerns made sense. "Then we do this ourselves," he said finally. "We go public one last time, with everything we have." They prepared for their final move. Gathering every piece showed how deep the conspiracy ran. Using Maya's old contacts, they hacked into the planetary communication network once more. This time, they included personal testimonies from alien survivors of the experiments, smuggled recordings of council meetings, and detailed plans of the secret facility. When the second broadcast aired, it left no room for doubt. The council's leadership splintered as accusations flew. Some officials resigned immediately, while others tried to deny involvement. Protests grew larger and more organized, with humans and aliens standing side by side. But the fight wasn't without cost. Assassins targeted Jacob and Rachel repeatedly, forcing them into hiding. Each attempt reminded them of Maya's sacrifice and strengthened their resolve. As they watched the galaxy rise up against injustice, they knew the battle ahead would be long and difficult. Yet, for the first time, they felt hope. Change was possible, if they were willing to fight for it. The protests grew louder and stronger, spreading across Vega 9 and reaching other colonies. Humans and aliens marched together, holding banners that read "Unity over oppression" and "End the lies." The streets were filled with chants and speeches, and for the first time, Jacob felt a glimmer of hope. People were standing up, not just for themselves but for each other. But the council wasn't ready to give up. They deployed military forces to quell the unrest, sending armored vehicles and armed troops into the cities. In some places, clashes broke out between protesters and soldiers. Jacob and Rachel watched the news in horror as images of violence flashed across their screens. Fires burned in the streets, and tear gas filled the air. It was chaos. Despite the danger, Jacob and Rachel continued to speak out. They addressed crowds from makeshift platforms, urging peaceful demonstrations while sharing more evidence of the council's corruption. Their faces became symbols of resistance, appearing on posters and holoscreens everywhere. But fame came at a price. Assassins targeted them relentlessly, forcing them to move constantly and rely on a growing network of supporters to stay alive. One night, as they hid in an old warehouse on the outskirts of Vega 9, they received unexpected visitors. A group of aliens entered quietly, led by a wise elder named Zinera. Her skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight on water, and her eyes held centuries of knowledge. She introduced herself as part of a secret coalition opposing the council. "We have been watching you," Zinera said softly. "Your courage has inspired many, humans and non-humans alike. We wish to aid your cause." Rachel was hesitant at first. "How can we trust you?" she asked carefully. "We've already been betrayed once." Zinera nodded, understanding their caution. "Trust must be earned," she replied. "But know this, we share your goal. A galaxy where all species are treated equally. Together, we can bring down those who seek to divide us. With Zanera's help, Jacob and Rachel gained access to resources they never could have imagined. The coalition provided safe houses, transportation, and even advanced alien technology to protect them from assassins. For the first time, Jacob felt like they had a real chance to win. As the summit approached, tensions reached a breaking point. The council tried to delay the meeting, claiming security concerns, but public pressure forced them to proceed. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered in a massive auditorium, surrounded by thousands of protesters outside. Jacob and Rachel prepared to confront the council leaders directly, armed with undeniable proof of their crimes. When the day arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Jacob stood on the stage alongside Rachel and Zanera, facing rows of council members seated behind a long table. Cameras broadcast the event live to billions of viewers. Jacob took a deep breath, his heart pounding as he stepped forward. "For years, you have lied to us," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "You have used fear to control us and hatred to divide us. But no more." He gestured to a large screen behind him, which displayed footage of the experiments, leaked documents, and testimonies from survivors. Gasps rippled through the audience as the truth unfolded before their eyes. One by one, corrupt officials resigned or were arrested, their crimes exposed for all to see. The crowd erupted in cheers, celebrating a victory long overdue. Yet, Jacob knew the fight wasn't over. Rebuilding trust would take time, and there were still those who clung to old ways of thinking. As he looked out at the sea of faces, human and alien alike, Jacob felt a sense of purpose. They had taken the first step toward a better future. And though the road ahead would be difficult, he believed they could walk it together. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to change. The council's corruption had been exposed, and many of its leaders were gone. Some arrested, others forced to step down. A new group of delegates took their place, promising transparency and fairness. For the first time in decades, laws started to shift. The armor mandate was abolished, replaced by policies encouraging mutual respect and cooperation between species. Jacob and Rachel became symbols of hope for millions. They traveled from planet to planet, speaking at rallies and meeting with leaders who wanted to build a better future. Wherever they went, they were greeted with cheers and gratitude. Aliens thanked them for standing up against injustice, while humans praised them for showing that unity was possible. But despite the praise, Jacob and Rachel remained humble. They knew they hadn't done it alone. Zanera and her coalition played a key role in keeping the movement alive. With their help, protests turned into peaceful dialogues, and anger gave way to understanding. The aliens who had once been forced to wear armor now walked freely among humans, sharing stories and traditions. Jacob marveled at how much he had learned from them. He realized that humanity wasn't superior. It was just one piece of a vast, interconnected puzzle. Back on Vega 9, life slowly returned to normal, or rather, a new kind of normal. The streets that had once been filled with fear and division now buzzed with collaboration. Markets overflowed with goods from across the galaxy, and schools taught lessons about interspecies history and culture. Even the factories hummed with workers from different species, building things together instead of apart. Jacob often found himself gazing at the stars from Vega 9's orbital station. It was his favorite place to think. One evening, Rachel joined him, leaning against the railing beside him. "It's strange," she said after a long silence. "I used to study alien cultures because I thought they were fascinating. Now I see them as family." Jacob smiled. "We've come a long way," he said, "but there's still so much work to do." Rachel nodded. "True equality won't happen overnight. Some people will always resist change. But at least we've shown them it's possible." As they stood there, watching the endless expanse of space, Jacob felt a deep sense of peace. The scars of oppression wouldn't fade quickly, for humans or aliens, but healing had begun. The galaxy wasn't perfect, but it was moving in the right direction. Months later, Jacob received a message from an unexpected source, Ethan Cole. The senator reached out to thank them for their courage and admitted his own doubts during the early days of the uprising. "You reminded me why I got into this line of work," he wrote. "To make a difference. Thanks to you, I'm finally doing that." Jacob shared the message with Rachel, and they both laughed. Despite everything, they had inspired others to be better, not through power or force, but through compassion and determination. Years passed, and the story of Jacob and Rachel became legend. Textbooks mentioned their names alongside those of other revolutionaries who had fought for justice. Yet, when asked about their legacy, Jacob always gave the same answer: "We didn't do it alone. Change happens when everyone works together." From the bustling cities of Vega 9 to the farthest reaches of colonized space, the galaxy stood united in its pursuit of a brighter future. Humanity had finally learned that strength didn't come from domination. It came from partnership. And as Jacob looked out at the stars, he knew they were just beginning.